Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Tom Hester, and I am pleased to serve as your worship associate on this precious day of February 1st, 2026, when we not only have the opportunity to share worship together this morning, but we can also delight at the peak of the snow moon at 4:09 this evening. I am also delighted to introduce our pulpit guest today. Reverend Eric David Carlson is a UU minister currently working as an associate hospital chaplain after serving UU congregations in Wisconsin, Illinois, and post-Katrina, Louisiana. As you will soon experience, he is a musician and a singer. Most importantly, however, he is married to our minister of faith formation, Reverend Kimberly Tomzak Carlson, and father to their son Miles.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Society, where we celebrate the wisdom of our Unitarian ancestors who teach us that the love of the divine is one and unifying, and our Universalist past, which knows that that love has no bounds. Let us come together, combating isolation with community and fear ever with love. Come, let us love together.
Please rise in body and spirit for our opening hymn, Come Sing a Song With Me, number 346. Good morning. I am Reverend Kimberly Tomchek Carlson, and it is my honor to serve as your Minister of Faith Formation. Today marks the beginning of Black History Month, and I know, right? Woohoo! It's February. And my history-loving heart swells with joy to share with you one of my favorite Universalist ancestors, Annie Bizzle Jordan Willis. She is an ancestor who believed fiercely in the worth of every child and devoted her whole life to using education to lift up her entire community. Annie was born in 1893, 133 years ago, to Mary J. and Joseph Fletcher Jordan. She grew up alongside her siblings, William, Mary, and Martha, in a family that deeply valued learning, faith, and service. Her father, Joseph Fletcher Jordan, was a minister who believed something radical for his time, that God is a loving God, a God who cherishes all people and who would never abandon or condemn humanity to eternal punishment. When he could no longer preach in churches that taught otherwise, he left. In time, he became one of the first Black Universalist ministers in the United States. That is a name worth remembering, so you're going to repeat it after me. You ready? Let's say it together. Reverend Joseph Fletcher Jordan. Try it. Reverend Joseph Fletcher Jordan. Ooh, A+. He spoke these powerful words: God loves all people, whatever the color of their skin. Think how bold that would be to say that time in history. Now, to understand Miss Annie's life, it helps to understand the world that she grew up in. In the southern United States, laws known as Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation. Black and white people lived separate lives, separate schools, bathrooms, restaurants, and opportunities. This separation was never equal. Black children were left with old books, broken desks, and overcrowded classrooms, while white children received better education and greater opportunity. In many ways, the legacy of this unfair system still lingers today. When Annie was 11, her family moved to Suffolk, Virginia, where her father became the pastor of a small church and the head of the Suffolk Normal Training School. The school existed because Black children were denied access to decent public school. They had few supplies and little money and an overwhelming need. The Jordan family gave it everything they got. They all worked there, and Annie gave the most. While the other children played, Annie helped teach younger students. She learned how to calm classrooms, comfort frightened children, and believed in every student, even when the world insisted they were worth less. She grew up quickly, and she became a teacher long before she became an adult. As a young woman, Annie attended the Norfolk Mission College, where she met and married Richard Willis, and they had a daughter, Dorothy. But life was not easy. When Richard went away to serve World War I, Annie worked 12-hour days caring for her daughter and her students, earning all of $5 a month. Through heartbreak and hardship, she remained steadfast. Teaching was not simply her job, it was her calling. When Annie's father died in 1929, the question arose, who could lead the school now? Reverend Joseph Fletcher Jordan, he entrusted his life's work to his devoted daughter. Miss Annie became the principal of the Suffolk Normal Training School, known locally just as the Jordan School. With the blessing of the Universalist General Convention, she led a school of 200 students, from kindergarten all the way to 9th grade, with 5 teachers. Miss Annie believed that education was about more than reading and writing. It was about helping children imagine lives beyond the peanut fields and the factories that surrounded them. The school stood in the shadow of a peanut processing plant where many Black adults labored long hours for low wages. Miss Annie wanted her children to know that their lives mattered. She tolerated no discrimination, not by age or size or skin tone or ability. Cleanliness, courteousness, and thoughtfulness were her hallmarks, offering students tools for dignity and success beyond the classroom. Then came the Great Depression. Jobs disappeared, hunger spread, but Annie made sure her students had at least one good meal a day. Some of them even slept at the school to stay warm. Northern churches sent boxes filled with clothing and pencils and toys and books. Her children, they would climb trees and gather mistletoe so they could sell them up north for Christmas funds. The whole community worked together, and the school, it was a shelter of hope. But hard times meant shrinking support, and in 1938, white, predominantly male Universalist leaders decided, without consulting Miss Annie, that the school should stop offering education and instead become a social service center. They claimed that public schools were, well, good enough now. Miss Annie, well, she knew better. Jim Crow schools were still unequal, and Black children still needed teachers who believed in them. She protested, she argued, but without the funding, she was forced to comply. The school was renamed the Jordan Neighborhood House. Most classes closed. Annie lost a lot of her authority, but what she fought to keep, she did, and that was the kindergarten. She loved the youngest children most of all, and because parents worked long factory shifts, Annie cared for 3-year-olds long before the word preschool existed. She taught ABCs and songs and manners and pride and possibility, and she saw the promise in every child. Year after year, her kindergarten graduations became grand community celebrations covered by the local papers. Her students grew up to be doctors and judges and teachers and electricians and preachers and civic leaders, and they never forgot her gentle voice or her fierce belief in them. After 70 years of service, Miss Annie retired in 1974. She continued living in the school until her death in 1977. The night before she died, the school's new director came to visit her in the hospital. Miss Annie's final words were simple and profound. "Watch out for my children." We remember Miss Annie B. Jordan Willis as a good ancestor, a Universalist, a Black woman who stood strong against injustice, who believed in love over fear, and who opened doors for children when the world tried to keep them shut. She taught generations how to read, but more importantly, she taught them they were worthy, they were loved, and they belonged. May we be the kind of people who watch out for the children. May we be the kind of faith that opens the doors of the world tries to keep shut. And may we remember, love practiced daily is how history is changed. The end. And I just want to show you a picture of Annie.
I invite you now to join with me in the spirit of reflection, meditation, and prayer. After I'm done speaking, we'll join for just a brief moment of quiet reflection, followed by our seated singing of hymn 123, Spirit of Life. Great Spirit of life and compassion, known by many names, but whom I simply call love, be with us now. Be with us as we offer gratitude for the bounty of our lives, the resources and relationships that sustain us and hold us in our being. Remind us of our worth and dignity, and inspire us to do good for those whose worth and dignity has been denied. Comfort those of us who grieve by fostering compassionate connections among and across communities, affirming that though our pain be uniquely ours, caring and healing are collective. Embolden us to proclaim our loving truth to all who will listen, all who resist, knowing that whatever the consequences will be, positioned on the right side of history, we will be on the right side of love. Grant us the space to celebrate in our joys the little victories that can be so sustaining in difficult times, as we need all the victories we can muster. And always keep in our hearts that little spark of celestial fire called conscience, that which connects us to ourselves, each other, and the divinity in, around, and beyond us. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
We'll now have a moment of silent meditation. I again welcome you to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, races, ethnicities, histories, abilities, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you are carrying today and all your heart longs to set down. We welcome all people watching online as we live stream this service. Hello out there. We enthusiastically welcome guests joining us today. If you are a guest visiting in person and want to connect with us, please fill out a welcome card. It's located in the pew rack right in front of you, and drop it in the offering plates that will come around in a few minutes. If you're visiting online and want to connect, a link to connect with us will soon appear in the chat for you to click on and to fill out. Someone from the church will reach out to connect with you. After the service, we invite you to join us for a social hour across the hall in the Lean House Common Room. Some accessibility notes. You can find hearing assist devices and large print hymnals and orders of service at the back of the sanctuary, as well as worship activities for children, and anyone who wants them. There's a fragrance-free area in the front right pews. If you're watching online, enable YouTube's closed captioning on your viewing device. Now I'd like you to join me in a meaningful and powerful affirmation of our mission. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. Every week, we have an opportunity to practice our values through sharing our resources. Our pledges are at the core of our spiritual practice of generosity. In addition, the church shares half of all non-pledged cash offerings in the plate with a community organization practicing our value of interdependence. Today, we share the place with the Black String Ensemble. And I'd like to note that our musician accompanist here today, David Hellman, is a member of that group, and he will be, all right. And not only will he be performing for us today, but he will also be available after the service in the common room. And if you have more questions about the Black String Ensembles, you can ask him about it there. But from what I have heard, the ensembles uses Black music and arts to address pain, foster healing, promote love, call for justice, and guard against hopelessness. The ensemble is committed to using music as a healing force for the soul in the immediate aftermath of community violence. May the practice of giving bring us joy. The offering will now be gratefully received as we sing our children's recessional. I invite all children, youth, and RE volunteers to sing the first verse of the hymn and then head across to the Lee House Common Room for religious education. If your child needs to check in for RE, please accompany them to the Common Room now. Please join us in singing hymn number 348, Guide My Feet. reading this morning was selected by Reverend Eric Carlson and comes to us from Reverend David Bumbaugh, who served UU congregations for over 40 years. This is an excerpt from Reverend Bumbaugh's address to the Southeast UU Conference in 2008, in which he identified a core set of UU beliefs based on contemporary UU cosmology. I find that his soaring rhetoric integrates scientific and spiritual ideas into poetry. We believe that the universe in which we live and move and have our being is the expression of an inexorable process that begins in eons past, ages beyond our comprehension, and has evolved from singularity to multiplicity, from simplicity to complexity, from disorder to order. We believe that the earth and all who live upon the earth are products of the same process that swirled the galaxies into being, that ignited the stars and orbited the planets through the night sky, that we are expressions of that universal process which has created and formed us out of recycled stardust. We believe that all living things are members of a single community, all expressions of a planetary process that produced life and sustains us in intricate ways beyond our knowing. We hold the life process itself to be sacred. We believe in this interconnected existence. The well-being of one cannot be separated from the well-being of the whole, that ultimately we all spring from the same source and all journey to the ultimate destiny. We believe that the universe outside of us and the universe within us is one universe. Because that is so, our efforts, our dreams, our hopes, our ambitions are the dreams, hopes, and ambitions of the universe itself. In us, and perhaps elsewhere, the universe dreams dreams and reaches toward unknown possibilities. We hold as sacred the unquenchable drive to know and to understand. We believe that the moral impulse that weaves its way through our lives, luring us into practices of justice, mercy, and compassion, is threaded through the universe itself, and it is the universal longing that finds outlets in our best moments. We believe that those located to the margins have important contributions to make to the rest of community life, and that in some curious way, we too are all located on the margins. We believe that all that functions to divide us from each other and from the community of living things is to be resisted in the name of the larger vision of a world everywhere alive, everywhere seeking to incarnate a deep, implicate process that called us into being, that sustains us in being, that transforms us as we cannot transform ourselves, that receives us back to itself when life has been used up. Not knowing the end of this process, nonetheless, we trust it, we rest in it, and we serve it.
When we think about the intermediary, we cannot see the reality of being. When we think about the acts revolutionary, we cannot believe that they are really happening. When we think about the true severity of all the crimes that are happening, can we extrapolate exponentially? We do not find our future happily, and we do not perceive the truth of how it's come to be. We do not know everything that we don't clearly see, and we cannot say who is right until we all agree. Sacred is the human soul through all eternity, and we may dwell upon the inconsistencies of the wills of those who try to control our destinies and true reality. Then we may come to know the universal question. It's more important than the answer anyway. We do not perceive the truth of how it's come to be. We do not know everything that we don't clearly see. We cannot say who is right until we all agree. Sacred is the human soul through all eternity. As we sit and ponder life's great mystery, we do come together in this faith community, and through our dialogue we'll finally come to see that we are here to serve love and to help our hearts and minds be free. And we do not perceive the truth of how it's come to be. We do not know everything that we don't clearly see. And we cannot say who is right until we all agree. Sacred is the human soul through all eternity. All right, well, good morning.
Good morning.
Again, I'm the Reverend Eric David Carlson. I use the pronouns he, him, and his, and I am incredibly honored to be your guest minister this morning. So, a little less than 16 years ago now, I would answer a call to be the minister of a small rural congregation in northwest Illinois, tiny little town called Stockton. And despite my initial trepidation to serve a less than urban ministry, this little historically Universalist congregation would teach me more about our ministry and theology than I could have possibly imagined. This small little white clapboard church in the middle of the fertile Midwest prairie was founded by Universalists in the last year of the 19th century, and has stood as a lone beacon of liberal religion for nearly 13 decades now. There were even several members among the congregation who had been born into the church, direct descendants of founders 3 or 4 or even 5 generations before. One of these, we'll for the time being call him Art. Art was a retired farmer in his late 80s, and he would glower at me from the pew that his family had held since before he was born. whenever I would mention political agendas or hint at my own liberal leanings. He was particularly hostile towards any discussion of workers' rights or anything that might be construed as social gasp. So one Sunday early in my ministry, I pulled him aside during coffee hour, and I tried to seek some answers to my questions and reconcile my understanding of our faith with what he thought it was. How could he be so skeptical of a social safety net or against government intervening in order to help people who are less fortunate? He would smile paternalistically and tell me that the government didn't do him any good, and he didn't trust the government to do anyone else any good either. So, gruff, yet entertaining of my questions, he went away from our conversations pretty much unchanged. And I was confused and a bit disappointed as a young minister that I couldn't find any way to connect with ideas, or really to connect him with my ideas. But the longer I stayed at the church, the more I learned about Art and his true universalism. Just before I arrived in town, neighbors whom he barely knew had a fire in their barn complex. The fire burned quickly, and the barn was gone by morning. The rural volunteer fire department was unable to do anything to stop the loss of the structure, and were there essentially to make sure that the fire didn't spread to the fields or to other buildings. But Art was there. With a crew of people he'd assembled before dawn. They brought shovels and rakes, but also trucks and tractors and cranes and front loaders. It was a veritable parade of equipment and labor on hand when the sun broke over the eastern horizon that morning. In a matter of hours, the still smoldering rubble would be methodically removed, and the frame of a new barn would begin to take shape. And in the middle of it was Art, NRA belonging, Tea partying, Universalist Art, relying not on the government, but on himself to get things done. Now, this is universalism in action. This is the lesson that Art was able to share with me, that it isn't what one believes or even how one votes that makes one a universalist. It's what one does. In that moment, on that crisp fall morning, Art barely knew his neighbors. He certainly wouldn't have known their political persuasions, and if he did, it wouldn't matter. In that moment, the only thing of importance was that his neighbor was in need, and there's no choice but to help. It's just what you do. Or, as another strong, gruff Universalist farmer would tell me, I don't have to like you, but I've got to love you. Universalism. So the oft forgotten but most important part of our name, right, Unitarian Universalist, is what actually defines us as a faith movement, at least currently. So you know all those new values centered around love, right? Pluralism, and yes, right? The love is universalism. Now, this is a concept that has existed for a very long time, at least 1,800 years in the Christian tradition, and in other faiths for much longer than that. Our direct tie to this theology of love begins in the 2nd century of the Common Era, or less than 200 years after the man we know as Jesus lived and died, through a teacher appropriately named Origen. Now, Origen of Alexandria was an early Christian scholar and is considered among the church fathers, though he himself was never canonized. He was never sainted for sake of a couple specific heresies. Ironically, the first he was condemned involved his Unitarian view of God, but it's actually the second we're most interested in this morning. Origen expresses his understanding of the end of the world and what happens after we die. In seminary, we call this eschatology, but it's really just the idea of what happens after this lifetime. And Origen expresses it as the ultimate reconciliation and reunion of all creation with the Creator. Now, in his language, they would call this apokatastasis. But all you have to remember is it's universalism. This is akin to the Big Bang, Big Crunch model of astrophysics, right? Where singularity turns to multiplicity only to return eventually to singularity. It also informs traditional Universalist theology in that it claims we all come from and eventually return to the same source, taking the possibility of eternal damnation for anyone or anything off the table, right? Hell cannot exist in perpetuity if we all return to the same place from which we came. Now, the modern ethical interpretation of this mindset is, of course, that we all matter, we all have value, none of us is more or less important than any other, and each of us in our own way is beholden to serve the greater good. The modern spiritual interpretation of this is the metaphor that we all come from a loving, benevolent source to which we will ultimately return and to which we are ultimately responsible. Whereas I like to think Origen was centering love a full 1800 for our current UU's value statement. Now, I was fortunate to be able to attend the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Phoenix, Arizona, in June of 2012. I was representing the congregation I was serving then and as a member of the UUA Board of Trustees. Now, this was a very controversial General Assembly, dubbed Justice GA. Does anyone remember Justice GA? Of course, Reverend Chris does. But there was a law passed a few years earlier in Arizona that allowed local police to arrest and indefinitely detain anyone suspected of being undocumented. Sound familiar? The law, the infamous SB 1070, would be enacted prior to our going, and many groups were calling for a wholesale boycott of Arizona. But after much debate and political maneuvering amongst the delegates at prior GAs, the decision was made to go to Phoenix in 2012 as planned, but to focus on justice issues and limit our business proceedings to the very minimum required by our bylaws. In other words, it was inappropriate to go to Phoenix if we weren't to be directly involved in creating positive change and bearing witness to the injustices there. We also committed to engage early and often with groups on the ground who were doing the work, ensuring not only our presence was welcome, but also productive. The week's events culminated with a joint protest of the County Sheriff's Detention Center, dubbed Tent City, a makeshift camp housing more than 2,000 prisoners, none of whom had been convicted of any crime. The inmates, those expected of committing a deportable offense, await trial, sometimes indefinitely, and were routinely denied access to an attorney or even a phone call. Sound familiar? We heard the stories and names of the 122 inmates at Tent City who had died in the previous year, none of whom, again, had been convicted of any crime. We Unitarian Universalists assembled that last Sunday of the conference in the shadow of Tent City And despite the counter-protesters who would try to incite us, and the sheriff's deputies who proudly displayed their tank and donned riot gear, we maintained our peaceful, loving attitude. Busloads of UUs arrived at the site and proceeded to that great Sarah Dan Jones, "When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love." And simply passed in song the neo-Nazis and Minutemen representatives without incident. We heard from a panel of interfaith speakers, including UCC President Reverend Jeffrey Black, who dedicated his churches to the cause of migrant justice, joining the UUs, and representatives from our partner organizations, Somos Arizona and Puente. And our youth delegation was right at the front of the crowd, singing and chanting while donning yellow Side of Love shirts in various degrees of teenage modification. And 2 days later, we heard from our U.S. Supreme Court, which ultimately agreed with what we'd been saying, that SB 1070 and laws like it are unconstitutional principles of due process and the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. But even more important, at least for me that week, was what happened my final night there. After the closing ceremonies, everybody went out to dinner, and I mean everybody. 3,000 UUs or so took to the streets near the convention center and flooded all of the available restaurants at the same time. I sought in vain for a table or a group or anybody I could join. The first several spots I stopped at, but eventually found a restaurant with a large outdoor patio, and one of those tables in the back was filled with our UU youth, some of whom I'd met at the protest, others the night prior at the bridging ceremony. It was an honor to serve you, and God bless you all. Now, any question I had about whether or not we were helping evaporated in that instant. Someone who would have had every right to be at least annoyed with the loud, obnoxious teenagers at the table, knew who we were, why we were there, and what we were trying to do, and was appreciative of that. Now, the great 19th century Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou once said that if we can agree in love, then disagreements can do us no harm. This is the belief that allows us to set aside our differences and focus on what we can do together. Be it comfort one another in times of loss, help each other celebrate life's great joys, help our neighbor when she is homeless or hungry, or simply live within that tragic gap, as Parker Palmer says, between what is and what ought to be. And we have so much of a gap right now. I know it can seem overwhelming and depressing, and we might feel despondent or worse. The time when ICE is trying to do on a national scale what Arizona attempted to do with SB 1070 over a decade ago. When wars and the threat of wars are made at the whim of a single leader through the lens of a social media post. When it feels like the only people getting richer are those already rich, and the numbers are even worse than we feared. I too have despaired at the news of late. I too have contemplated our failure of our people and our democracy to simply do the decent thing towards our neighbors and each other. Not currently leading a congregation as I have the last 2 decades has meant I don't feel like I have as much of an individual impact as I once did. And it's been hard. It's been hard to sit back and watch from not exactly the sidelines, maybe the bench, right? But just as in Phoenix all those years ago now, my faith continues to be restored by our young people. This last week, students all across the country staged walkouts in solidarity with Minneapolis students protesting ICE. The First Unitarian Society's own youth, Susie, was one of the student organizers at her South Milwaukee High School and reached out to Reverend Kimberly to ask her to accompany the march this past Friday. But because Reverend Kimberly was still traveling home from that conference last week, she asked if I might go. So bundling up against the cold and donning a yellow Side with Love stole, I set off to find a youth I'd only met in passing and simply help bear witness and support these students, some of whom were demonstrating for the first time in their lives. I parked at the school where I saw other parents opening up minivans and SUVs filled with protest signs. One was setting up a hand-warming station and heating a huge carafe that I would later learn contained hot chocolate. Right at 12:30, students started exiting the school and crossing the street to where we were parked. A dozen or so, then more. Then a crowd descended upon the chilly corner. Knowing to look for a yellow stole, Susie ran up to me and introduced herself and her friends, and we started to march. And despite some real concern that most of those who left the school would not also march, Susie and the other organizers were amazed at how many folks came out, huddled in the bitter, bitter cold. Over 300 of the 900 or so student body was there, spreading out across the sidewalks as we traversed the snowy ground to demonstrate along Route 32, the busiest and thus most visible location within walking distance of the school. Signs like, "We're skipping our lessons to teach you one," and "Wisconsin's cold enough without ice, thank you," dotted the crowd. And despite the frigid temperatures and a temporary snow squall in the middle of the protest, these kids chanted and sang raucously for over 2 hours, screeching in applause at every car that honked on the way by, goading 18-wheelers to blat blat their air horns, many of which did. A local UCC church adjacent to the protest site opened its doors as a warming shelter, and hot chocolate was doled out in little cups. Too cold and windy to deliver speeches, organizers handed out printed statements from students regarding the protest, which included statements about dignity, justice, and due process. They were quoted on CBS News locally and seen by hundreds of folks driving by. And I was struck by how much of an honor it was to be there among them. Not as an organizer or a speaker, not as a chaperone or instructor, but rather as a participant, following their lead, a peer in our demonstration for justice. Just like in Phoenix at that crowded restaurant, our young people were demonstrating what it means to live out our universalism. And it's pretty simple, actually. To live one's life by ever choosing love over fear, one decision at a time. I say it's simple, but it's not easy. It's perhaps simple to say that I don't have to like you, but I have to love you. But it's so much harder to practice. That we care as much and deeply for those with whom we disagree can be a very difficult task. Impossible to get right all the time, as none of us are perfectly loving, even on our best days. And we certainly can't do it alone. That's why we come to places like First Unitarian Society, and why when our kids invite us to a protest, we show up. That's why we try to build our families and social circles with those who will support us in our journey as we endeavor to help our loved ones ourselves. And that's why we take as much inspiration from our future Universalist leaders like Susie as we do from the heroes of our collective past, like Origen and Ballou and Jordan Willis and Bumbaugh. All of them, past, present, and future, pointing us towards community and the consistent advocacy of love and justice and dignity. And all we can do is keep showing up for one another and keep marching together. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen. I've been hungry, I've been cold, I've been dragged out, left all alone. I am you, you are me, we are one. I've been beat down, I've been hurt, had my good name drawn through the dirt. I am me, you are you, we are two. Lost my country, lost my land, lost the best friend that I had ever had. We are you, you are me, we are free, and we are strong, and we are kind, and we got the yoke of justice on our side. We are many, we are one, we are love. We have faith, and we have pride. We are boldly serving on love's side. We are many, we are one, we are love. We are the guard at prison door. We are the cross, so tired and sore. We're a crown, you're one more. We are four. We are the leaves upon the tree. We are the waves within the sea. We are the earth, so much alive. We are fire. We are the strength before the fall. We are the ones who heed the call. We are many, we are one, we are all. We are strong, and we are high, and we got the justice on our side. We are many, we are one, we are love. And we have faith, and we have pride. We are boldly serving on love's side. We are many, we are one, we are love. We are many, we are one, we are love. We are many, we are one, we are. Go now in peace. Go now in love and fellowship. Think in particular this week about our universalism and how we live it every day simply by choosing love over fear over and over and over again. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn, Love Will Guide Us.